2026 didn't even wait for the world to finish its New Year's hangover. Caracas. A city that's seen everything except what was about to happen next. Newsrooms were scrambling, streets were buzzing, and every TV on the continent was flashing the same message. Something big was coming. And no one, not even the people involved, understood just how insane the next 48 hours would get.
The United States didn't sanction Venezuela, didn't negotiate, didn't threaten. They straight up captured Venezuela's president. Yes, captured. As in, sir, you have an appointment in New York. Please come with us.
Now, if your brain just said, hold on, the U.S. can do that? Welcome to the club. Because this story isn't just wild, it's geopolitical insanity with a plot twist every 5 minutes. To understand how a sitting president ended up in a U.S. courtroom, we need to rewind. Accusations, oil politics, secret operations, and a whole lot of international side-eye brought us here.
Nicolás Maduro. Depending on who you ask, he's either the defender of Venezuelan sovereignty or the guy who turned the country into a real-life survival game. He took power in 2013 after Hugo Chavez, inheriting a nation already on the edge. And from day one, the United States treated him like a walking red flag. Corruption, election fraud, human rights violations, and then the big one, drug trafficking. Maduro denied everything. Venezuela called it political theater. The U.S. responded by putting a $15 million reward on his capture. $15 million! That's not a bounty, that's a Marvel movie budget. Here's where things get messy. The kind of messy where even soap can't help. For years, the U.S. and Venezuela weren't just beefing. They were slow cooking a full geopolitical stew. Washington accused Maduro of everything short of stealing the moon. Corruption, rigged elections, shady deals. Basically the political version of, bro, what are you doing? And then came the big one. The U.S. claimed Maduro was tied to a drug trafficking network. Maduro said it was all lies. Venezuela said it was all propaganda. The U.S. said, cool story, and slapped a $15 million reward on his head. $15 million. That's not a bounty. That's the kind of money where random cousins you've never met suddenly call you brother. From that moment on, Maduro wasn't just a president. He was a walking, talking, international wanted poster. The kind of situation where even his shadow probably needed legal advice. Here's the part nobody expected the U.S. didn't just accuse Maduro. They went full Netflix crime series and built a case like they were trying to win an Emmy. American prosecutors claimed Maduro wasn't just running a country. He was running a cartel. A whole narco state, as they called it. Basically the political version of saying, bro, your government looks like a group project where everyone cheated. They alleged he worked with traffickers, protected smugglers, and used the military like Amazon Prime for cocaine. Maduro said the U.S. was hallucinating. The U.S. said, cool, see you in court. And then, in a plot twist nobody had on their bingo card, the U.S. The kind that come with mugshots, case numbers, and lawyers who bill by the minute. At this point, the situation wasn't political anymore. It was personal, legal, and expensive, the holy trinity of American problems. After the indictments dropped, the U.S. didn't just sit back and sip coffee. They went full CSI, Washington, and started connecting every suspicious dot they could find. Sanctions hit Venezuela like a meteor. Banks froze assets. Oil shipments got blocked. And American officials talked about Maduro like he was the final boss in a video game nobody asked to play. Venezuela fired back with speeches, press conferences, and enough dramatic energy to power a telenovela. They said the U.S. was lying, bullying, and trying to overthrow their government. The U.S. said, relax, we're just enforcing the law. Which is basically the diplomatic version of cope. Meanwhile, the Venezuelan economy was collapsing like a Jenga tower built by toddlers. Inflation went wild. People fled the country. And Maduro kept insisting everything was fine. The political equivalent of saying, I'm not drunk, while holding a traffic cone. By this point, the world wasn't watching a political dispute anymore. They were watching a slow-motion international divorce. And the US had already hired the most expensive lawyer in the room. With sanctions crushing the economy and indictments stacking up like dirty dishes, the US took things even further. They went after Maduro's entire inner circle. Generals, ministers, intelligence chiefs, nobody was safe. If you had Maduro's phone number, the US probably had a file on you. They accused top officials of corruption, smuggling, money laundering, and basically every crime that fits inside a courtroom. Venezuela called it a political attack. The US called it Tuesday. And while all this was happening, Maduro doubled down. He tightened control, strengthened alliances, and acted like the whole situation was just a minor inconvenience, the political equivalent of ignoring a fire alarm because you're in the middle of a sandwich. Meanwhile, the international community watched like it was a live-streamed drama. Some countries backed Maduro, others backed the US, and everyone else just grabbed popcorn. By now, the conflict wasn't just legal or political. It was global, a full-scale diplomatic street fight, and every nation had an opinion whether they wanted one or not. At this point, the US wasn't just investigating Maduro. They were treating Venezuela like a crime scene with a national flag on it. American officials started coordinating with allies, gathering intel, and building pressure like they were prepping for a season finale. Every new report, every leaked document, every classified whisper added fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, Maduro tightened his inner circle even more. He surrounded himself with loyalists, military commanders, and anyone who wouldn't immediately run to the US with a USB drive. The tension kept rising. Diplomats argued. Sanctions expanded, and the international community watched the whole thing like a toxic group chat they couldn't leave. Then came the moment that changed everything. The US publicly declared Maduro's government illegitimate. A diplomatic slap so loud it echoed across continents. Venezuela responded with speeches, rallies, and enough patriotic music to soundtrack a 3-hour movie. But the damage was done. The world was now split into two camps. Those who recognized Maduro, and those who recognized the indictments. This wasn't politics anymore. It was a global custody battle, and everyone was choosing sides. With the world split and tensions boiling, the US decided it was time to stop hinting and start acting. They didn't send troops. They didn't send diplomats. They sent something far more American, a full-blown strategy to squeeze Maduro from every angle. Intelligence agencies ramped up surveillance like they were binge-watching a show they couldn't pause. Every phone call, every meeting, every suspicious flight suddenly mattered. Sanctions tightened again because apparently the first 20 rounds weren't enough. Oil exports were blocked, bank accounts froze, and Venezuela's economy started wheezing like an asthmatic running a marathon. Maduro responded with speeches about sovereignty, imperialism, and how the US was trying to destroy the revolution. The US responded by adding more names to the sanctions list, the diplomatic equivalent of saying, "Cry harder." Meanwhile, ordinary Venezuelans were stuck in the middle. Food shortages, power outages, and inflation, so wild it could have been a meme. People weren't just struggling, they were surviving. By now, the conflict wasn't just political or legal or diplomatic. It was human. A nation caught between a government refusing to bend and a superpower refusing to blink. And the world watched, wondering which side would break first. By now, the US had tried everything short of sending a strongly worded text message at 3 a.m. Sanctions, indictments, diplomatic pressure, the whole toolbox. But none of it made Maduro budge an inch. So, Washington escalated again. This time, they targeted Venezuela's oil industry, the one thing keeping the country's economy on life support. Cutting off oil revenue wasn't just pressure. It was a chokehold. Venezuela called it economic warfare. The US called it policy. Same move, different marketing. Oil tankers were blocked. Foreign companies backed out. and Venezuela's currency started collapsing faster than a cheap lawn chair. Maduro responded by doubling down on his alliances: Russia, China, Iran, basically anyone who didn't mind poking the US with a stick. State TV showed him shaking hands, signing deals, and smiling like everything was fine. It wasn't. Behind the scenes, the crisis was spiraling. Hospitals lacked supplies. Businesses shut down. People waited hours for basic goods. The country wasn't just struggling, it was unraveling. And yet, Maduro stayed in power. No matter how much pressure the US applied, he refused to fall. It was like watching someone survive a hurricane using nothing but stubbornness and a broken umbrella. This was the moment the US realized something important. If they wanted Maduro gone, they'd need more than sanctions. They'd need a strategy that went beyond economics. A move bold enough to change the entire game. After years of pressure, sanctions, indictments, and enough diplomatic drama to fuel 10 seasons of reality TV, the US finally made its boldest move yet. They officially recognized Juan Guaidó, a young opposition leader, as the legitimate president of Venezuela. Yes, you heard that right. The US basically said, "Maduro, you're fired," and handed the job to someone else like it was an episode of The Apprentice. Dozens of countries followed, some out of principle, some out of politics. Some because they didn't want to argue with Washington before lunch. Maduro, of course, rejected the whole thing. He called it a coup attempt, foreign interference, and a violation of sovereignty. The political equivalent of shouting, "Get off my lawn!" at a global superpower. Meanwhile, Guaidó suddenly found himself in the weirdest job promotion in history. He had international recognition, global support, and zero control over the actual government. It was like being crowned king of a kingdom you can't enter. The streets of Venezuela erupted. Protests, rallies, clashes. The country split in two overnight. Families argued, neighbors fought, and social media turned into a battlefield with worse aim than a stormtrooper. This was the moment the crisis reached maximum chaos. 2 presidents, 1 country, and a world watching like it was the season finale of a show they didn't remember starting. And then came the moment that turned the entire crisis into a global spectacle. The US. They didn't just indict him. They put a price on his head. A literal reward, $15 million for information leading to his capture. That's not diplomacy. That's the plot of an action movie where someone definitely jumps out of a helicopter. Washington framed it as a legal measure. Venezuela called it an act of aggression. Everyone else just stared at the number like, bro, 15 million? Suddenly, Maduro wasn't just a president under pressure. He was a wanted man internationally, publicly, and with a bounty big enough to make half the planet reconsider their career choices. State TV in Venezuela went into overdrive. Patriotic music, fiery speeches, dramatic warnings, the whole cinematic package. Maduro, said the US, was trying to assassinate him politically. The US said, relax, it's just law enforcement, which is basically the diplomatic version of don't take it personally. The announcement sent shockwaves across Latin America. Allies panicked. Opponents celebrated. And the internet did what it always does, turned it into memes faster than governments could react. This was the moment the crisis stopped being a political conflict and became a global manhunt with a price tag. And that's where the story leaves us. A global crisis turned into a manhunt, a bounty big enough to break the internet, and a world suddenly realizing the rules aren't what they used to be. Because once a sitting president ends up with a price tag, nothing is off the table anymore. Not diplomacy, not sovereignty, not the old playbook everyone pretended to follow. 2026 didn't just raise the stakes, it rewrote them. This is Brutru, where the world's chaos gets unpacked with clarity, comedy, and a little cinematic spice. See you in the next one.